Hello and welcome to Imp's WWE Adventures podcast on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. You can help the network out by leaving us a 5-star review. You can also give a donation directly through Red Circle and become one of the amazing community by joining the Social Suplex Discord. A link is in the description. Listen to the other top-notch shows here on the Social Suplex Podcast Network: One Nation Radio, Keeping It Strong Style, All Things Elite, Wrestling Articus Things, Trish and Sarah, Tunnel Talk, and the AEW Match Guide. My name is Matt Maher, aka Imp, and this is your quick look back at the WWE week that was. 30 minutes of your 1 week to Wembley warning. It's nearly in time for All In. We're not going to get it next year because we're going to Texas. I'll let Trish keep her y'all in thing, that made me laugh. But over here on the WWE side, it is the Smackers after SummerSlam, Monday Night Raw, building towards Berlin. Let's go over to Tulsa, Oklahoma, for the Smackers after SummerSlam, the return of Roman Reigns, setting up for what's going to be happening over the course of autumn, our Road for Survivor Series. What is going on with Solo Sikoa and Roman Reigns? Who's Cody going to be facing? All of that jazz. So let's jump on over to Friday Night SmackDown. Roman Reigns returns to Friday Night SmackDown, being missing ever since WrestleMania, having his reset, coming back as a huge babyface. They've finally done it after 2015 completely failing. From that point onwards, we've got about 4 or 5 years, oh no, maybe more than that. The final Brock Lesnar Roman Reigns match was in 2022, so about 7 years of this feud, which is insane. Absolutely insane. But they've finally done it. They finally got Roman Reigns as their top guy. It took near a decade. We're nearly in we're half a year away from 2025. It took that long, but they finally done it. Arguably, he was such a big star. They already was their top babyface in all but show allegiance. Character was a heel, but he was the most overact. And now, finally, they've got him as the most overact as a babyface. They can launch the Roman Reigns rocket ship. The fact that he's gone this way isn't the worst thing in the world. Because him being the babyface guy, that brings his story full circle. So I actually had to talk about the segment. It kind of feeds into it a bit. Throughout the show, Solo got to both interrupt the opening segment and then call out the big returning star in the main event. He's the real main character here. The summer of We Want Roman finally reaching its climactic beat as the original Tribal Chief strode on out with pyro and one hell of a pop, which I will have just played, so you've just heard it. Destroying both Tongans with ease and staring down his cousin. Superman punch to Sikoa, but the man is saved from the spear. But, oh look here, what's this that's been dropped on the mat? Picking up the Ulafala and giving us that beat before the Tongans jumped in again for a second beating. The cathartic moment as everything the Tribal Chief character was built on, that rejection from the fans, that forcing to acknowledge him, finally coming full circle all these years later, with the fans fully behind every single swing, every motion, every gesture, everything getting reaction over pop. Absolutely everything. With this, the character arc is complete. It's a very rare thing in WWE to have seen a full character arc go this way. It's come full circle. After this, it's winning the title. But after that, I feel like him on top as the champion again with the babyface thing. It kind of feels like that's his character gone full circle. The whole story has kind of come to a head. Because the Tribal Chief is feeding off of the failure. It's feeding off all of that. Somewhat similar to what Bray Wyatt was doing. It's a similar theme under Vince McMahon of characters that had failed, then trying to find ways to redeem themselves. And Bray Wyatt was exactly the same. Roman Reigns is exactly the same. But I feel like this is it for the Tribal Chief character. This is his moment, getting crowned on top. Everything the character was built upon, all of that hatred of the fans not accepting him. Now they fully accept him. He is their number one guy. Proof of it was when they were reacting and cheering to every single little thing he was doing on that show. He felt like the biggest star in WWE by quite some margin. Go back to who are incredibly over. Everybody's over in this current era. They just enjoy seeing the people do the things at this point. But they do cheer Roman Reigns a little different. There's that something special about him at that moment, that they've finally done it. It took them 9 years. They finally got there. Because in my head, it's kind of automatic. This year for Roman Reigns is getting over the bloodline drama. Next year is babyface Roman Reigns finally becoming the thing he was always meant to be a decade after he was given that rocket ship. I like how the dates kind of line up for it. Where you crown Roman Reigns And finally, you have him with the crowd fully behind him as champion. And I don't know how long you leave that. Maybe it's when he's champion is when you use him to then either prop somebody up or the championship character comes full circle and it now then becomes completely about something else. It's very rare, it feels like, in WWE to have seen such a long character arc actually fully play out without really getting disturbed. Just look at Seth Rollins and this sheer amount of character retweaks he's had to have. Where that he's got history, but he's not got arcs that feel over the course of such a long time that have been completed. But the way that the Tribal Chief character is all about those years of hurt, suddenly the character arc starts in 2015. It starts with him winning the Royal Rumble, when the rocket ship was lit under him and the fans completely rejected him. When that happens is when this entire journey now begins. It's finally complete. It's finally happened. It's a really nice feeling. I called it cathartic. It's just really lovely when a character arc just naturally it's like when you wake up from a dream, not because you've been disrupted, not because an alarm's gone off or something like that, but because the dream's just finished. I don't know if you've ever had that. It's the greatest way to wake up. You're having an absolutely lovely dream and then the story just finishes and it's the most peaceful waking up I've ever had. I don't know if it's because I'm a very imaginative and creative person, but I constantly dream quite wild stories. When I say your dreams come true, I doubt I'm going to be holding a shotgun in Teddy W Land shooting off tornadoes. I don't think that's going to happen. But, you know. Anyway, the show going off air with Reigns laying chairs into the back of Lower as Solo shouted down from the safety of the entranceway. Our end point is Roman versus Solo. Still feel like this is the most heated way that you could go into Survivor Series. Roman Reigns putting a team together to properly club the lads down. That's where I would like to see it go. Obviously, the end point is Roman Reigns versus Solo. That's not the destination I'm actually interested in seeing. I'd rather see Roman Reigns and either the old bloodline or some form of team against the new bloodline. For me, that's almost the more interesting route. You build a Survivor Series. You can still do Roman Reigns versus Solo Sikoa. Like, you need a B-show filler. You need something. And that will really prop up one of those shows. That's right. I'm not saying do this at like Royal Rumble or don't save this for WrestleMania because the match is either Cody or The Rock. You don't save Solo. Solo for something else entirely. The point of making this, I don't even need Roman Reigns versus Solo. I don't need that moment of Solo also getting speared by Roman Reigns in a singles match. I'm not sure everybody will feel that way. So we'll see. Moving on, the show itself, I've not really got a lot of notes elsewhere, but Cody Rhodes, he kicks us off still as champion, immediately talking about who he should defend against at Bash in Berlin, when, as we were talking about earlier, Solo Sikoa came out and Cody clapping that, "You're back of the Berlin line, bitch." He didn't say that, but I liked my line. KO making the save against the trio, Solo dropping the tease for him confronting Roman, which then played off later. Turns out it's Kevin Owens Cody wanted to give the title opportunity to. KO reluctant, but the champion had already made his decision, saying it's in reward for helping fight against the bloodline. Given it's week 1, we don't know why Kevin Owens' character's reaction was to be reluctant to a title match offer. But on paper, it's an exciting little B-show bout for Europe. I'm assuming Gunther's main eventing, given he's German now. I hear you're German now, father. Later backstage, Nick Aldis relaying that the higher-ups have Roman Reigns at the top of the contenders pile, but he's gonna go overrule them. And he's like, no, Cody's right. The champion's right. His vote counts way more. Gonna be Kevin Owens versus Cody Rhodes. I wasn't surprised to see quite a lot of negative. I was like, what do you mean you don't want a title off? A kind of reaction on social media. But knowing the Kevin Owens character and the way that Triple H at the moment, the way he's writing is somewhat trying to bring in stuff from the past. It feels like this year specifically he's had a lot more self-referential stuff brought in to make past of the characters just feel deeper. Because there is all that stuff that's happened. It's just, what do you do when the writing was shit? How do you bring this in when it's all it's not great and it doesn't really flow or whatever? Do you pick and choose bits? We did see all of it happen. So if you pick and choose, then technically from an audience point of view, then it's all going to matter, right? It's a weird one. But you have got all of that backstory and you can lean onto it to just prop up the current generation to make it feel like there's all this history behind all the stuff that they're doing. The reality is a lot of it's useless because the era of 2017 to 2022. I was just talking to the other social suplex guys. Yeah, for me, that era I call the drizzling shits. It's the drizzling shits era. It was not a good era to watch. It's painful. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we see over this next few weeks that Kevin Owens wasn't reluctant because he doesn't think he deserves it, which is what the crowd were chanting, you deserve it. It was more that when he becomes that title hunting wrestler, what that does to him, he maybe doesn't want to do to Cody. So it's less of a reluctancy to go for the title and more of a reluctancy to have the prize fighter brought out of him by Cody. So more of a friendship, relationship-y kind of thing. But also I expect the next couple of weeks to bring that out of him so that we do get the prize fighter. That felt like what it was teasing. But aside from our champions and Roman segments, this show was really a number one contenders night. A-Town Down defeated the Street Profits in a tag team number one contenders qualifying match, guaranteeing more number one contenders action next week. LA Knight came out to a great action, I will add, with a new guitar riff rendition of his theme ahead of the United States number one contenders match. Also with his theme, just listen to how much better it sounds when they've hired outside talent after their own in-house schlock. The good lord. Santos Escobar faced Andrade in that number one contenders match for the US title. With Escobar having a chin wag with the champion beforehand, the tides were somewhat projected somewhat strongly, given more time to do lucha dance stuff than I was expecting. Even with the mellow interference, it didn't immediately steal a win. It taken Elektra getting up onto the apron for a second mellow moment to actually do it. And finally, we got DIY blasting past Pretty Deadly in their number one tag team match. There was one normal match as Jade Cargill got a wee little bout with Alba Fire. Oh, I keep calling it. It's one of those ones where I write it down as Kaylee Ray. It's like, no, she's got a bullshit NXT name. What is it? They don't remember that. Alba Fire, that's it. Naomi evening the odds when Davenport tried to get her little baddie attack. Another one where, what's a bloody NXT name generator? What is it? Because it's not Priestley. Speaking of name generating things, it's like this next guy, he's not called Eichner. It's the Giovanni Vinci, got a VTR play for his new rich Italian man character. But I did really like all the stuff they were doing for this character. It looked like he fit all of the vibes that they were trying to pull off here. Obviously, it was a produced video, but all of the vibes that Vinci was giving off was like, I never actually saw you as having a guy that could have such a strong character and for the vibes all to be right, but yeah, this actually surprised me. Oh, and Lou Ferrigno was in the crowd, so insert a joke about how incredible. It's the Hulk. Anyway, that's the end of the SmackDown review. A show which really you can watch on YouTube because you only need to watch Roman stuff. So when the Roman segment is on YouTube, just watch that. But anyway, let's jump on over to Monday Night Raw. And opposite of last week where I was fearing about it, because I record like an hour and a half and you got, 40 minutes? And I was so proud that I got it to run that smoothly. And I was really happy with the edit as well, with how all the sometimes stuff started with it, with all the different inserts and things. Because I've considered, should I do that for the midweek shows? Like, do let me know if you would like that more regularly. Because it takes the extra effort, I was like, well, what if I leave that for the pay-per-views just to make them feel more special? Because I still try and do the full edits for the weekly shows and things, but for the super special pay-per-views, I don't know, because I don't normally do one for the B pay-per-views, so like maybe for like SummerSlam, for the Royal Rumble, for Survivor Series. WrestleMania the first time I did it, but like a special proper edit with lots of insertions and things so I kind of keep the vibes across. I say I won't do the B pay-per-views, unless the atmosphere is like it was in France. Then obviously I'm like, to get across what the atmosphere is like, I'm going to include sound bites just so you can relive what it was like. So maybe Berlin might be like that. That's a tangent for the future. I've got a few weeks to think about that. Let's jump on over instead to Monday Night Raw for a 2 out of 3 falls Intercontinental Championship main event.
Sami with a headbutt, driving Breakker back to the middle of the ring. Sami Zayn now, top rope, gonna fly, spear out of midair! A spear out of midair! Bron Breakker retains the title.
2 out of 3 falls, Bron Breakker versus Sami Zayn. Don't ask why the Champions rematch clause is suddenly back. The answer is, it's an easy writing crutch. It was hinted at on Smackers, with KO taking the piss out of Roman getting high up on the list, in spite of the clause not being used in years, making its use here easy to digest for the audience. Still don't like it though. Like, congrats, you set up the boring crooks to be an option in your world again, and you made it easier to digest by setting it up on a previous show. You still introduced the crooks, like the boring crutch to lean on. You still introduced it, so I'm not going to applaud you for that. So the reasoning for the match is, whatever. But I'm not arguing that it's not the perfect style of bout to properly establish the new young IC champion and propel him on his way. Because it is. This match was absolutely perfect in setting Bron Breakker on his way as a really established act as the IC champion. This was almost like a farewell for him and Zayn being paired together. It felt absolutely perfect. The only downside being that they only had about 10 minutes. This Sami Zayn fella, like, he sure gets these 2 out of 3 falls matches. Like, just a secret line of classics over the years. Just search Sami Zayn 2 out of 3 falls, they'll all pop up, and they're all great. Every one of them. Even though it would be nice to get more than 10 minutes for Sami, when it comes to Breakker's blitz style, it's absolutely perfect. Like, you don't need to go 30 when you've got a Steiner in the ring. Triple H learned that the hard way. Don't search it up. You'll be very bored. A match like this also builds upon the good work they've been doing to book Bron as a hot-headed young lad. His speed and power is insane. He will break you. But because he's charging around, he makes mistakes, and smart wrestlers like Sami can catch him out. That's what I absolutely love. To give this awesome charging beast actual weaknesses as you're building it up. Really establishing him as a character with much more depth than you often see in a WWE kind of build. An awesome ad break leading spot as Breakker ran ringside, holding Sami over his shoulder like he's going to power slam charge him through the barricade, and that spot we've probably seen quite a few times, only to instead just launch the Canadian over the barricade, back first onto the timekeeper's chair. It was an amazing sight. So much power just launched him. The first fall came from Sami's smarts, the second from Breakker's power, so now the third can be a tasty back and forth battle between the two. Breakker's charges met with dodges and roll-ups. The best visual of exactly that, with the champion charging the ropes, only to be caught by a Helluva-esque standing high boot. Sami just collapsed onto him for the cover. And a great ending too, with Zayn on the top rope, blocking yet another Breakker offense, only for him to get speared out of his boots as he flew on down with the flying nothing. But he got a big spear pop. Breakker wins. But that burst of power wins out in the end. Basically everything I wanted to say about this match I just talked about there. I love what it was building, what it was doing. The fact that it only had 10 minutes just meant that they had to do that flow at a relatively decent pace. Yes, would like to see more Sami, but it felt like with Breakker's style, 10 minutes was fine. Sometimes when he goes full throttle like this and he scores a fall, it kind of makes sense that the opposition's going to be trying to operate a little bit quicker as well. I really enjoyed it, really enjoyed that main event. As for the rest of the show, I don't know, because I feel like with Monday Night Raw, there's such a mixture right now where it's got relatively strong stuff every now and then. I feel like the Liv Morgan and Dom stuff just completely moving on finally is like a huge weight lifted off the show. With I think it felt like the entire time with Ripley coming back, but because Dom and Liv were still in that same first gear, even though Ripley had come back, it's like, oh, for God's sake. And then finally they're able to kind of move past stuff, and you're not having me point at the lawsuit sign all the time now. It's like, oh, okay, finally, we've moved on. We've moved past this thing, this weird self-inflicted wound. We've moved past it. But for the entire show, like, there's a lot of kind of just momentum dips, and a lot of that is just in terms of like TV momentum and pacing and things. The WWE with their shows have, like, especially in the Vince era, so many pacing and time management problems and issues just plagued the show, and they've corrected a lot of them, but there's a lot that still remain. Like, little things like that I thought had gone, but have come back. Things like wrestler comes out to the ring, then when you return from ad break, then you do an entirely unrelated segment, you do an advert, you do an interview, then you come back into the ring and the person's like, whoo, whoo, whoo. Then their opponent comes out. It's like, oh, stay focused, stay on track. Like, in terms of pacing of the show, that's horrific. There's so much wasted time within that, where with the actual properly focused structure, you could easily transition much better. But that's just one example. There's lots of little pacing issues throughout WWE's production, and yeah, I thought a lot of them were going to get corrected, but there's a lot of problems still, and Monday Night Raw is a pretty bad offender in terms of that thing. So, like, one of the things I realised is it's very difficult, and the thing that I noticed the most is it's when it hits that, when about an hour and a half in, where there's just a huge lull. It's just a huge lull in the show almost every week. So even though you've got those hot periods throughout the show, it feels like there's always going to be a bit of a lull, just because of the way that they manage their shows. And when I say the show tells you that the women's tag team titles don't matter, that's kind of what I mean. The momentum and pacing of the show, when they come out, it's at a point in the show where the flow of it, it's actively telling you this doesn't matter as much. When you're watching a show and you feel it, that's not just you when you're watching it. The show is actively telling you it, whether it's doing it on purpose or not. And the spots they keep putting the women's tag team matches in, they're using it in these spots every single time. So just automatically you're just like, oh, they don't matter. Hence why you can have Io Sky and Kairi Sane, two absolutely amazing wrestlers, an amazing tag team doing really entertaining flying stuff, and the crowd are chanting this is boring. Like, it's I said this last week, that's not on the crowd. That has been conditioned, but that you watching at home can go, oh, that's a crap crowd. But that is what they have been conditioned to react to the women's tag titles like. I'm not putting that on them. That has been conditioned just by watching the show. That for me doesn't say, oh, they're bad fans. That tells me they've been watching. That's what that tells me. These are active viewers. Anyway, Rhea Ripley opened the show. She's just pissed off, a wee little tiny penis joke before switching to promising to beat up both Liv and Dom. The invite out for the duo, working before she said the words, with the two villains out in the crowd to chat shit amongst drowning boos. Dom, the biggest adult in the room, being like, she gets me tendies whenever I want. She lets me play video games whenever I want. Getting heat by him realising he's probably not as into the being a sub for Mammy than he thought he was. And the crowd were, boo, boo. This is another thing to the conditioning stuff. The crowd watered Rhea, the hero that they're meant to be really loving. They watered her, not because they were bored during the promo or because it was any badly scripted or whatever, but literally just because she paused for not even a second, and the conditioned beat is so Pavlovian at this point that the crowd probably didn't even realise they were doing it. But because they were generally behind her, when Rhea started properly digging into them, the crowd started chanting sloppy seconds at Liv, and they were cheering for all of the Aussies' quips. The silly drama of this story playing to the perfect sports entertainment beats as Priest emerged from behind the two out of the shadows, the former champion ready in his wrestling gear. A big old brawly brawl ensued. Damien and Dom threw the crowd back to the ring, Rhea and Liv disappearing backstage. And this takes us into Damien Priest versus Carlito. I wouldn't call the ad break swing into the match a smooth transition. Carlito jumping Priest in the ring during the Dom beating as Cole called, "That's Carlito, who Damien Priest has a match with tonight." Oh, okay. Oh no, more like Pete Davidson. Oh, okay. No emotion. A second week giving new hero Damien his in-ring spotlight, positioning him strong as a top lad beating up Judgment Folk. The South of Heaven chokeslam already getting great reactions as a good guy finisher. Post-match beating summons the inverse of earlier, as Ripley's the one to emerge and scare off the villains. McDonald saving his Irish Judgment brethren from comeuppance from Priest. Our two goodies hugging in the ring, as Cheeky Dom tried a sneaky top rope nothing, instead caught by Priest to tease the Rhea Riptide on Dom, pop for down the line, failing to hit the move, but he gets pulled away, foot by Liv, so we've teased it, it's going to happen, it's going to get a big reaction at some point. And that's your end point. That's your end pop. Have her hit that move on Dom, then she wins the title back or something off the huge reaction afterwards. Something like that. Speaking of title people, Randy Orton and Gunter had their chinwag. Mr. Snake Man out in his gear. He won his first world title 20 years ago. Like bloody hell, I started watching towards the end of 2005. It'll be 20 years for me too soon. Buddy Gunter ragging on Randy for wasting his natural potential. Randy being honest about his mistakes, telling the German. He's German for the Berlin build. He's German. He's owned up to those mistakes and he's now done pretty damn good for himself. Randy building up what he's achieved with both his career and family. So the crowd obviously just chanted USA before watting the foreigner. Sometimes I have questions about these crowds. I know why these chants happen, but then I'm just watching it and being like, but you are people. You are capable of thinking for yourselves. You're capable of listening and then reacting to what you've listened to. But here you seemingly just didn't listen to anything, chant-wise. Or the entire time you're looking for a chant. Actually, that's the other thing. Is wrestling is unique in that fact that there is a crowd of people who are looking to create chants or looking to be the person who gets the chant started. I'm not one of those people. I'm a silent applauder, I guess. Really, way to explain it. I sit there quietly, be like, oh yes, maybe a little golf clap. It's like, oh, how pleasant, how delightful. The champion making things personal and calling out Orton's grandfather, and he was using that by jumping off of Randy earlier, showing his pride when it came to his family. He was like, all right then, I'll rip into your family, knowing that would easily anger him and set him off. Drew McIntyre then came out. Like, oh, where's this going? Is he going to transition from beating him? He won at SummerSlam, so in his mind it makes sense for him to go to the World Champion. But before he can say anything, Randy RKO'd Gunter and CM Punk jumped the Scot. Punk then later cutting an interview backstage talking about how it was never about the bracelet, it was about the names on the bracelet. Just to keep tally then. So since the match, the loss doesn't matter, the bracelet doesn't matter, It feels like a tad of a overcorrection, like a tad of a course correct in reaction to the memes that wasn't needed at all. Like, you don't need to clarify how sentimental items work. Like, I plead, your audience isn't that dumb. That's not what the memes were joking about. I plead. Basically, this episode has just been me watching this show going, the audience can't be that dumb. They can't be, they're not, which means the easiest solution is that they're not that dumb. And it's no reaction to it. But this does immediately bring me to the other notes, just like with SmackDown. Not a whole bunch to talk about outside of those key moments. There's just little things that made me laugh about that show. But it was a very other notes kind of show, with plenty of middle bubbling, which you're about to see. Bo Dallas' spooky VHS tape off the back of last week's main event. Baltimore was where it all started, but the work must continue. Cue teasing flashes on an old TV screen. Odyssey Jones made his proper in-ring debut. A wee backstage bit establishing that this is a Kofi idea, rather than just both New Day lads are happy with the replacement big man. Jones beat up a poor jobber as commentary ran down his strength accolades. Final Testament then came out to be called the Final Testicle, and my immediate reaction is, this angle continues. But this will set up a 6-man for next week. Bronson Reed got a repeat of last week, keeping that fire kindled without a match to be immediately building to. The fans chanting one more time because they just like the things in this current era. Alpha Academy had a tornado tag against the Creed brothers, with NXT North American champion Obafemi watching ringside, properly turning Ivy Nile with a wee ringside attack on Maxine, an awesome spot with the most super duper of plexes, Otis up on Creed's shoulders superplexed, another off the corner. Pete Dunne got a sit down with Jackie, shutting down the Butch name and calling bullshit on it. I'm not Butch, I'm the Bruiserweight, an 18-year vet in my own right. Pretty much guaranteeing all the fans, all they heard was, Butch chants then. So we're chanting Butch at you. As I said earlier, our awesome Sky Pirates of Damage Control continue to wrestle awesomely. To little reaction because the show keeps telling you the women's tag titles aren't that important. DeVille, Stark and Baszler are now called the Pure Fusion Collective, which immediately to me sounds like a shaving brand. Like, to be fair, it sounds like a good one. Like, we're not talking £5 of Amazon here. Like, are you joking? For the Pure Fusion, you got to at least be 20 for such a high quality product. Surely. And as you can tell by that rib, that's it. That's all I'm going to talk about from Night Raw. It was just like SmackDown. You've got your maybe 2 segments that are your peak moments of the show, which are worth checking out. One, which is particularly worth checking out over everything. Other than that, middle bubbling. For a 2-hour show for SmackDown means is like, you can check this out, it's fine, it's not the end of the world. For a 3-hour show, that means over a third of your show is middle bubble. It's like, oh, you feel it. You feel it when you're watching it. Main event was outstanding, though. Highly recommend watching the main event. Yeah, I guess it's the same for SmackDown. Both shows had an outstanding main event. Both shows, the World title stuff is interesting. Also, the Judgment Day stuff is interesting and raw. There's a lot of middle bubble. Not all of it is like building to stuff I don't care about. Like the stuff with the White Six, it made sense that this week the White Six would have a middle of the show bubble because they were the main event focus last week and we've got a nice little rotation going in the modern era. You don't see the same people feuding every single week. In this era, you don't get Apollo Crews fighting the Hurt Business for like 4 months straight every single week on television. But no. You get your big moment in the main event, and then the next week you build up the flow a little bit more. If it's not everything, I do agree that from like, well, there were a few things that should have been put on the bubble. That was good. But when you got over an hour of it, like, come on, mate. You're taking the piss a bit. But anyway, that is the end of the week of WWE. I will be back next week to talk about more of the bubbling build to Berlin, or the bubbling build to Berlin. That's gonna catch me one of those days. That's very difficult to say. So anyway, I'm gonna have to call that the name of the show now. The bubbling build to Berlin. Oh, it's fun to say. But what do I call it next week? Because it's going to be the same again next week. Do I call it the bubbling build to Berlin 2? What do I call it? Anyway, we'll find out about it. Anyway, so that, I say thank you for listening, engaging in any form, any manner. Always appreciated. Never take it for granted. You can always catch me on the Discord if you hit me up on Twitter at the Damn Implicat. This week I've been a little bit more active than normal. By that I mean I actually made a tweet. Oh, I know. It's crazy. It's crazy. I've my activity on there has absolutely plummeted since Musk took over. So you can find me on the Discord a lot more. So for Social Suplex, if you want to click on the link in the description. Please do check out all the other shows here on Social Suplex. Really happy to be a part of the current lineup. Feel like we're in a really, really good place at the moment. And also, it is all in next week. So super excited, obviously, for that. So with that, I bid you adieu. See you next week. Adios. as I click my ankle during the goodbye. Goodbye. Oh, that's a little bit behind the scenes as well, because I record these from a current setup. I'm stood up, so I have to cut out a lot of just noises of me like moving, because that's not an issue whilst you sat down. But no. Sometimes my ankles just click. I'm over 30. I've reached that point. Anyway, need to end the show. So with that, see you next week. Adios.